People thinking that I'm special or different in any way, trust me, that's not the case. The only difference between you and me probably is that I will take what's considered the risk. Lock yourself in a room, switch off everything, and start visualizing. Start asking yourself, what is the life you want?
You know, as I sit here in this estate in the countryside of the United Kingdom, I can't help but laugh and think, how the hell did I end up here? Because the truth is, I wasn't supposed to be here, living this type of life. You see, society is programmed to run a certain way. All of the infrastructure, the cities, the laws, the jobs, the hierarchy, everything that makes society what it is, all of it was built that way intentionally, to have certain people performing certain jobs, to have certain people be more important than others. I mean, just think about it. For every captain in an army, you need thousands of soldiers. You need lots of people at the bottom so you can have a few at the top. Society was built in a way that allows certain people to become successful while gatekeeping success from everyone else. And I say that because by all measures that you can take, I was not supposed to be one of those successful ones. I was born in a small village in Dagestan in Russia, and coming from a place like that, there's not much you can do to be successful. So there's just been so many of these crazy moments in my life where I asked myself, how does one go from living in a small village in Dagestan to becoming one of the most successful self-made young men in the world? Because based on the way this society is structured, by all measures, I should be one of those people working low-level jobs and making minimum wage. Bear in mind, I have absolutely 0 degrees or qualifications whatsoever. I dropped out of school a few months into high school starting, and that's what society had planned for me. But yet, here I am, having achieved more at 24 than most people at the top of that pyramid will achieve in their entire lifetime, which means that there is a crack in the code, that somewhere the code through which society runs is broken, and there's a way to hack your way out of the system. And I'm living proof of that. In fact, there are 4 codes that I've used to do that. I call them the sovereignty codes. And today I will give you the 4 sovereignty codes so you can become a sovereign man and achieve the trifecta of sovereignty. And that is financial sovereignty, geographical sovereignty, and sovereignty of time. So let's jump straight into it. This is the first and one of the most misunderstood sovereignty codes of them all. I mean, let's just think about it. In order for you to achieve the success and freedom that most people don't have, it is fair to assume that you need to have some sort of knowledge that most people don't have. If you need to get to where 99% of people don't get, well then you need to have the knowledge that 99% of people don't have. If you want to become a sovereign man, you need to acquire knowledge to take you there. And you need to develop your sovereign mind just like you develop your body in the gym. Now, there is a big misunderstanding when it comes to acquiring knowledge. It's not any type of knowledge that will take you to the top. In fact, majority of the knowledge won't take you anywhere because there are fundamentally 2 different types of knowledge. You have conceptual knowledge and then you have empirical knowledge. Conceptual knowledge is the one that you acquire at school by spending 5 years of your life in university. If you study something like business, entrepreneurship, or economics in college, there's no doubt that you will acquire a lot of knowledge, and that will be a painstakingly hard process to acquire it. Now, all this knowledge you acquire through formal education is a form of conceptual knowledge. That is information that has been studied for decades and has a conceptual backbone behind it that ties it together through principles that are backed by theory. The problem with that is 99% of conceptual knowledge is not applicable in the real world. So what ends up happening to most people who do end up going to college as a means of acquiring knowledge is that after 5 years of pain and suffering to learn what was sold to them as the ultimate way of getting into a highly successful career, they end up with an immense amount of knowledge that they have no idea how to use or apply in real life. They know how to write a business plan, but they don't know how to actually start a business. They know all the theories and concepts about product market fit, but they don't know how to create a product that the market actually wants. That is always the end result of having only conceptual knowledge. So when I say that you need to acquire knowledge that the people around you don't possess, I'm not talking about conceptual knowledge, because you wouldn't be able to apply it in real life, so it wouldn't take you any further than the people around you in the first place. What I am talking about is empirical knowledge. That is what truly creates the sovereign mind. If you take the Renaissance, for example, by the way, which was an incredible transition in history from old world to new world, you know what fueled the Renaissance? What were the ingredients in that explosive development of that era? It was the deep admiration that the sovereign Renaissance men had for the even greater sovereign men that came before them. The Greeks, the Romans, the Arabs, the Byzantines. The sovereign Renaissance men studied deeply the achievements, the philosophy, the worldview, but also the architecture, the engineering, the business practices, all of these different domains. Quite simply, they looked back into the most successful people the world has seen to date, and they started to reverse engineer the fundamentals that led to their greatness. And by doing that, the Renaissance men were able to embrace such knowledge in their own work and apply it to real life. And you know who else did that? The founding fathers of the US, the sovereign men that led the American Revolution. They looked back at the achievement, philosophies, and governance systems of earlier civilizations to inform their own work. And their knowledge was based on Enlightenment philosophy and the legal traditions of Europe. John Locke's work on natural rights, government by consent, and the right of revolution had a profound effect on the Declaration of Independence as well as the US Constitution. The work of Adam Smith on free markets, competition, and the role of government in the economy influenced the founding fathers' views on economic policy. And you had the decentralized political structure of the Dutch Republic with its emphasis on local governance and individual liberties that served as a model for the founding fathers in the design of the federal system. And then you had the structure and governance of the Roman Republic with its checks and balances informed the founding fathers' ideas about the separation of powers as well as the creation of a balanced government. And that, my friend, is empirical knowledge. Empirical knowledge is about taking things that worked in practice before and learning from them. Learning from testing things in the real world without feeling the necessity to prove it through theoretical concepts. The most successful people I know today have tons of empirical knowledge. That is a set of information that they learned in the real world by testing things in their businesses or careers. Have you ever seen those videos on YouTube where people go around asking millionaires what their best advice for the 18-year-old version of themselves was when they were starting their careers? Do you notice that their answers are pretty much unanimously the same, which is work a lot, try a lot of different things, or don't go to college and get a job instead? What they are really trying to say here is acquire empirical knowledge, because they know that that is what makes someone successful. That is what creates a sovereign mind. And they know that the way to acquire empirical knowledge and develop a sovereign mind is not by sitting down in some business class in university, listening to a 67-year-old teacher who's never run a business in his entire life speak about how to write a business plan. So, from now on, I want you to always remember, if you're putting a lot of effort into learning conceptual stuff that has no application in the real world, you're not actually learning. At best, that's just some mental masturbation. At worst, you are completely wasting your valuable time that could be applied into learning things that will actually take you somewhere in life. And the sovereign men already knew that back in the 14th century. That's why they didn't spend time in classes. Here's how they approached learning instead, and I suggest you do the same. They would send researchers to travel throughout Europe, scouting monasteries, courts, and libraries for lost or overlooked texts from kings, architects, inventors, and philosophers from the Roman Empire, the Greeks, the Arabs, the Byzantines, and even the Indians. And they would then deeply research such findings to absorb their knowledge and implement it into their own work. And that is how they went from having this type of art during the Dark Ages to having full-blown 5-meter tall statues carved by hand from a stone of marble that portrayed realism and movement, characteristics which were unknown during the Middle Ages and that to this day are still some of the most beautiful works of art that have ever been created. And by the way, that's also how the sovereign men that led the American Revolution created one of the longest lasting sovereign nation in the modern times. And essentially what they were doing was rather simple. They would find successful people who possessed a lot of empirical knowledge and they would study the shit out of them so that way they could acquire that same knowledge and apply it in their own work. And that is exactly what I recommend that you do. Find someone who is successful and you aspire to be like and carefully study all of their stuff from top to bottom. Try to figure out how they do things, how they structure and run their businesses, how they approach work, how they think about the world, and what are their methods. Then go ahead and apply what you learned in your own life and your own career. That is the only way to truly achieve a sovereign mind. Learning from the people that already did it before you, and then once you successfully apply what they taught you, making an effort to improve and take their work one step further. And that's how I learned and how I developed my sovereign mind. And for the things that I didn't have anyone to teach me, I would just try things out in the real world. I put them to practice and I figured out if they worked or not. No one taught me how to close clients, so I developed my own way to do it. No one taught me how to charge more from the same clients, so I developed my own strategy to do so.
We're the experts that all the agencies in the worworld come to learn from. And one of our favorite things is to make fun of agencies that charge a percentage of ad spend. Because here's the issue, right? If an agency ever charges you a percentage of ad spend or percentage of revenue, just leave the meeting. Because here's the issue. Okay. Our incentives need to be aligned, right? So we should only get paid when
So I actually closed this client on a £2,800 a month plus 5% return on ad spend. So at this stage in my agency, I get most of, I'd say probably 70-80% of our overall agency revenue from performance fees. So you can see right here, I made some notes during the actual call. I don't know how well that shows up. So basically this company did, they've been around for around 6-7 months. They did 2.5 million pounds in the first 6-7 months. February, they spent 55K. Jan, they spent 108K. And now they're at a point where they're spending around £5,000 a day, about £6,000 a day. So I'm just going to try and show you that top bit right there. As you can see, the goal is with them in 6 months is to be spending 500K a month and bringing in around 1.3 million pounds a month. So that'd be around an 800,000 pound a month return on ad spend. And then you also saw right below that we charge them 2,800 pounds plus 5% return on ad spend. I'll go ahead and pop up that base retainer. You'll notice that it's something about like this, like 3,300 basis, 2,800 pounds plus this bridge client. So we charge that on top. Anyways, with this client, we estimate first month we'll make them probably around like 100 to 200K return on ad spend. So that's a 5,000 to 10,000 kind of within that bracket. 5,000 to 10,000 pound performance fee on top of the 2,800 pounds. And if things go as planned, or able to hit their benchmark that they wanted in 6 months, in 6 to 12 months, which is 800K a month return on ad spend, that'd be a 40,000 pound a month performance fee. The point is, that is a formula for success, and it has been ever since the 14th century. So just apply it. Now, the second trait you need to become a top 1% man who gets to play life by his own rules is the right environment. And that's one of the traits people never really give enough attention to, and is also the reason why so many fail in their own endeavors. Have you ever noticed that whenever very important people who change the course of the world, when they emerge, they never do things on their own? And what I mean by that, it's never one revolutionary or one scientist or one inventor that carries an era by himself. Whenever the world experiences an era of fast development and big change in sovereignty, there is always a bunch of people creating and discovering a bunch of different things at the same time, just like the American Revolution. There wasn't one person that was responsible for it. There was George Washington, Alexander Hamilton, Benjamin Franklin, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson. And you can also notice that there's usually hubs where all of these people congregate and where majority of the new inventions and discoveries happen. Just like today, the most famous movies all come from Hollywood. The most successful apps all come from Silicon Valley. And back in the Renaissance, majority of the famous inventions and arts of work all came from Florence. And that's because men have a community nature. It is in our nature to congregate together with people who think alike and have the same objectives as us. The sum of what a group of men can achieve together is exponentially greater than the sum of what these same men could ever achieve by working on their own. And there's a very, very specific reason for that. I'm sure that you have all heard of the saying that you are the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. And the reason for that is actually not because you share the same worldviews as them or anything like that. The reason is that us as human, we never operate at our maximum capacity. We can operate at maximum capacity for maybe a few days or maybe a few weeks, but we're not built to always be operating at 100%. That's not sustainable. So what happens is, over the long term, we always operate at our minimum hygiene standards. You see, there's a threshold within you of what you consider to be your max performance. So you have your max performance level, and then you also have your minimum hygiene standards. And no matter how hard you try, you will always default back to your minimum hygiene standards. Always. But there's a twisted secret here. Our minimum hygiene standards, they're not fixed. They're adaptable. They can move. And more importantly, your hygiene standards are very dependent on the hygiene standards of the people around you. So what that means is that when you surround yourself with people who have high hygiene standards, yours will automatically go up as a result. I mean, just think about it. Imagine you've been slacking off, right? So you haven't been going to the gym that much lately, and you haven't really been putting too much effort into the side hustle or the business that you want to start. Now, imagine you move into a house with 10 people who all go to the gym first thing in the morning, every single day, training as hard as it gets. Then, when they get back home, they work for 8 hours straight on their business, non-stop. I can guarantee you that in a matter of no time, you are going to be consistently hitting the gym and putting 8 hours a day into your business as well. And there are 2 main reasons for that. The first, it is going to be so much easier to do it when you have other people doing the same thing as you, because they're going to have your back and they're also going to inspire you to be like them. And that is the shallow reason. The second and most important reason is that one of the hardest things to do as a strong man is to develop the discipline of doing the things that need to be done every single day, whether you feel like it or you don't. The thing is, when you are alone, it is very easy to come up with excuses because no one is watching you, no one's looking at you, and you don't have to justify it to anyone except for yourself. Now, when you're with a group of 10 other people who are doing the things that need to be done every single day, you are going to feel ashamed to be the only one not doing the same. So even when you don't feel like doing it, you're going to do do it either way just because you don't want to be the only person in the group not putting in the work. You are essentially hacking discipline and taking it out of the equation. Remember, we always operate at our minimum hygiene standard. That means you never put all of your effort into becoming the best version of yourself, but you will do everything in your control to avoid looking like a failure to the people around you whose opinions you care about, because not doing so would break your minimum hygiene standard. So, by doing that, you have essentially turned discipline into a minimum hygiene standard. And that's why when you try to isolate yourself and achieve goals alone, you never actually get that far. Now, when you see everyone around you winning, you will not want to be the only one left behind. So you're going to put in the work to be on the same level as them. So whatever you want to achieve, you need to find a group of people who are working on the same goal and surround yourself with them. And that is how you make success inevitable. Now, here's the real beauty of this. Just a few decades ago, that would probably require you moving overseas to a completely different part of the world. Luckily, that's not the case anymore. You can now take advantage of the digital world to find a community of like-minded individuals who share the exact same goals and challenges as you. And by the way, that's the reason I created my first agency program back in the day. I realized that by going at this thing alone, I would only get so far. So I decided to surround myself with other young agency owners. And by the way, that decision was a big tipping point in my career. I launched my first agency program over 5 years ago, and since then, I released 4 different and updated versions of this program. It all started with 6-figure SMA, then Agency Incubator, then Agency Navigator, and now the most recent version I launched in 2024, Agency Accelerator. And the important thing was that with every single one of those, the amount of agency owners in my community grew exponentially. I mean, think about how much fire it put under my ass seeing posts like this every single day in our community. People closing 2, 3, 5 new clients a week, adding $2, $5, $10,000 worth of retainers to their agency's bottom line every single week. And more important than the results, seeing people put the work in every single day to get such results. It was simply impossible for me to not level up inside of the community, even though 5 years ago it was the community that I started. If they were doing it, I simply had to do it too, because I am the one leading the way, so I had to be in front. There was no space for excuses, only for execution. And that is my second tip for you to become the man that you aspire to become, which is find a community of like-minded individuals working towards the same goal as you and surround yourself with them. Now, during the first episode of Digital Sovereignty, I mentioned that a sovereign man has to possess 3 characteristics: financial sovereignty, geographical sovereignty, and sovereignty of time. And when it comes to financial sovereignty, there are countless careers that can provide you with that. There's actually a lot of ways to be financially affluent. But if you were to judge by this criteria alone, well then being a lawyer, a doctor, an engineer, a developer, even an actor or an athlete would all be valid options. The problem is when we get to the second criteria, which is geographical sovereignty. You see, even though all of these are highly prestigious careers, they are all different paths that actually lead to the same destination, which is being a subordinate, being stuck in the old world. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter how much money you make or how sought after and revered your career is. I want you to live an incredible life, a life of freedom. And what's the point of having all that money if you are trapped to a city or one location? You want an ultimate example of that? Take a football player. They have all the money in the world, but for 11 months out of the year, they are subordinate to their clubs. They're not allowed to travel whenever they want. They can't simply say, you know what? Today I'm working from home, like we get to do in this new digital sovereignty world as a sovereign man. They can't decide to simply take Monday off to enjoy a nice lunch with their family. To be honest, they can't even eat what they want most of the time because they have to eat the food that's available from their training center. And if they feel like eating something different, they need to ask for permission from their coach, their staff, their agent, the directors. And I know being a footballer is a dream for many people, and if that's your passion, I'm not taking that away from you, but that is the ultimate level of subordination. At the end of the day, what separates a sovereign man from a subordinate? Money? Power? No. A sovereign man chooses. A subordinate obeys. He follows instruction. So at the end of the day, during an entire year, a pro footballer may have a little over a month where they can actually do what they want. And even then, they need to be careful with what they eat and with their exercise routine, so that way they don't get too out of shape for the preseason. So no wonder most of them are happy to retire by 35. Do you see, the problem is, unlike us, they don't have a business that can run without them. So if they stop working, their income goes down to 0, which is exactly the problem I mentioned back on episode 1 that I personally faced when I was 17. And that really made me realize that if my income is linked to my time, I would always be a subordinate. And some of these problems also have a lot to do with our last criteria, sovereignty of time. This is the biggest trap of them all, especially when you pursue a high-paying career. You see, there's a very common scenario that happens with doctors, lawyers, or any high-income career when they start making good money. When they see how much they get paid for a few hours of work, their natural instinct is to think, I get paid extremely well for the hour of my work, so I'm gonna put a lot of hours now while I'm still young and fully energized, so that way I can slow down and enjoy later in my life. Big mistake, because here's what actually happens. These people start putting in 12 to 16 hour work days, 6 to 7 days a week, and they are making a killing. Granted, they're making money, good money. Now, where things start to go sideways is when they increase their living standards just as fast as their income grows. They start acquiring a bunch of expensive liabilities, such as big houses and fancy cars, which they can indeed afford as long as they keep working as they currently do. However, their living standards never go down because it's extremely hard to lower your standards, especially once you're already used to it. So here's the bottom line. They end up working slave-like hours their entire career just to pay for some fancy stuff that they can't even enjoy because they don't have the time to do so. And at the end of the day, when they lay down in bed after a long day of work, thinking about how bad they just want a simple walk by the beach, knowing that they could easily afford it, but can't actually even do it because of their lack of time and geographical sovereignty, that is when they look to the side and see us, sovereign men, enjoying life on our own terms. And you know what the funny thing is? We could be making half, a quarter, or even 10% of what they're making and still be living a better life. And they would still be jealous of us. So is their life what you really want? Think about how miserable it must be to have all the money you want, be able to afford to travel to the most expensive places, but never be able to actually do it because you don't have the most important resource of them all, time. So, what's the solution then? Well, there's only one, and that is to find work. That is to find a career, a business that checks the 3 criteria we have. And there's only one type of work that checks all 3 of those boxes, and that is running a digital business. And this event is called Digital Sovereignty for a reason. And the good news is, it is easier than ever to start working in the digital world. You see, most people think you need millions to set yourself free, which is completely false. As long as you have a business that is location independent, as in it's not restricted to one location and you can run it from anywhere in the world. Second, a business that pays you enough for you to quit your job and allows you to afford all of your expenses and still have disposable income to invest in assets afterward. And third and finally, can be easily outsourced. That is what I call a sovereign business. That is all it takes to achieve true sovereignty. And really, it's not that difficult. There's also one other important point to be made here. This trait is called a business. It's not a job, because as we just saw, a job cannot provide you with the 3 types of freedom that you need. And it's also not investments. Most people think they're going to get rich by catching the perfect time investment or by investing in some crypto or whatever it is. Listen, investments never made anyone rich. Investments don't make poor people rich. Investments make rich people wealthy, but you need to be rich in the first place. That is the honest truth of it. The only way to get rich, unless you want to be rich at 60 or 70, in which case, if that's the life you want, I think we're on different pages. I think honestly, just click away from this video, because my goal from day one was always make money, yes, but money wasn't actually the number one priority. For me, my number one priority was live a good life. And it's hard to live the life of your dreams and live a good life when you're in your 60s. That's just the truth of it. So if you want to live a good life now, the only way to get rich is through work. And then you reinvest the money that work generates you and you become wealthy. So if you want to have the money to then take advantage of the investment opportunities of a lifetime that are approaching us, you better have a business with high profit margins that puts those profits in your pockets, so that way you can use them to fuel your investments, which will then create generational wealth for you. So when it comes to digital businesses, you have a few options to choose from. You basically have 3 categories. You have service-based businesses, you have digital product-based businesses, and you have physical product-based businesses. Now, in order to choose the best one for you, there's one concept that you need to understand, and this concept is leverage. Running a business is nothing more than using leverage to generate a return. And there's different types of leverage you can use. You can use money as leverage, you can use time as leverage, and you can use expertise as leverage. Now, if you have a lot of time, a good amount of money, and a lot of expertise to use as leverage, the best business for you would be a digital product-based business. That is developing a software, a mobile app, or maybe an info product. That's because this sort of business allows you to leverage the 3 of them. They usually require a lot of time and money to develop and find product market fit. Dealing with marketing and leading a development team requires a ton of experience. And that's actually a good thing in case you possess all of those attributes, because it means the barrier of entry is quite high, so competition is lower, and you can actually sell these types of companies for multiples that's much higher than you would just sell an online store, for example. Now, if you have a lot of money and a lot of experience, but you don't really have a lot of spare time, the best option for you would be a physical product-based business. And by that, I mean e-commerce. And that's because since you are selling a physical product, apart from the initial creation of that product, or let's say you're white labeling it or doing branded drop shipping, once you get through that initial hump, now you have the product. So you don't really need to spend much more time on product development, which is different than digital products, for example. With digital products, there's always the coaching, the support, improving the product, updating it in accordance to what's happening in the market. And through your money and your experience, you can fairly easily scale a store to the big bucks. Now, I see a lot of beginners trying to start here, which is not ideal. Why? Because you don't have the money or the experience needed to make enough with it. You see, in order for you to make $10,000 a month profit with an online store, for example, you would have to sell anywhere from 500 to 1,000 units a month, which is not an easy task by any means, knowing that the margins in this industry are usually not high. Plus, then you have to deal with all other aspects involved in running an e-commerce store, such as inventory, distribution, logistics, finding and dealing with suppliers, building a cost-effective supply chain. Those are all tasks that require a lot of expertise. It's basically a recipe for disaster. And most importantly, as a beginner, you want to avoid getting into any type of business that requires you burning through money to get it off the ground. And that is because usually as a beginner, you don't have any money to start with, nor experience. The only thing you have is time. So here's where most people would then go, okay, so I need to find a business where I can leverage my time. And that, my friend, is how you fall into a trap of getting into a business that is essentially trading your time for money, exactly as I did when I first started my content agency. And as we both know, if you're trading your time for money, you are a subordinate. So what should you do instead? Well, let's be smart here. Instead of using our time and expertise, let's start a business that allows us to leverage other people's time and expertise. This way, we don't even need to have the expertise in the first place, and we are still able to achieve sovereignty of time. Now, how does that sound? Well, that's exactly what I did when I transitioned from a content creation agency to an advertising agency.
I've said it so many times and I'll continue to stand by it. Social media marketing, it brings so many opportunities. When I make $25,000 a month from social media marketing, that's mine. That's profit. That is my money to keep, right? That's my money to keep. Yes, I have certain things that I outsource for, but once again, that's just because I don't want to do it myself.
That's a service that I didn't disclose on episode 1. And the reason I chose this service was very simple. You see, for me personally with content creation, in order for me to generate double the results for my clients and thus double how much I was getting paid, I would usually have to double the amount of content that I was producing. With paid advertising, that's not the case. The work to generate $10,000 in return for your clients and $100,000 with a campaign on Facebook is virtually the same. The difference is for the $10,000 that we're bringing them as a return, the campaigns are running with, let's say, a budget of $100 a day. While with $100,000 a month that we're making them, they were running with a budget of $1,000 a day. And you know what the difference in work was for creating both these campaigns? Zero, none. And that is the reason I can make so much money with only a handful of clients and one contractor working full time in my agency.
I'm doing roughly $45,000 a month, and that is from 7 clients and just me and 1 employee. Spits out $45K a month in profit just from 7 clients. You know, that operationally, that's like a super lean fucking machine.
Because in order for me to double the results I was generating a client, and thus double how much my agency was getting paid, all it would take was 2 clicks in the Facebook ads dashboard in order to change the budget from $100 to $1,000. Now back then, paid advertising was pretty much the only type of service that allowed you to do that, to double your clients' results without actually having to double the deliverables. But listen, I'll be honest, the market has changed a lot, and that is exactly why now is the best time to get into this new world and start your sovereign business. Today, there's a variety of different services that allow you to provide your clients better results and thus get paid more without you having to put more work in. Services like paid advertising, as I was saying, email marketing, social media management, building long-form VSLs, even having a content creation agency that works with businesses to build up their short-form accounts, aka their TikTok, their Instagram Reels, stuff like that. So having a content creation agency wasn't actually the issue. That wasn't the mistake I made. It was the way that I ran the agency. That was the mistake, where I was trading my time for money. You could have a content creation agency and still not trade your time for money. Now, when I say these things, you might sit here and go, wait, what? How can you get a client more results without having to put in more work with stuff like social media management or copywriting or email marketing? Because surely, if you want to get more results with email, for example, you would need to write more emails, correct? Well, I mean, yes and no. You would need more emails, yes. You would need more social media posts, yes. But you don't need to create more. You see, things have changed a lot from the time in which I first started my agency. The work it takes to create 1 email and 10 emails is the same. Why? Because one of the biggest, most game-changing revolutions that has ever happened since the invention of the internet, AI, artificial intelligence. We have gotten to a point now where it's possible to get AI to write regular copy like weekly emails or web pages to the same level as a world-class copywriter. And I'm going to show you how to do that in practice in episode 3. Now, what I need you to understand is that with AI, you only need to do the work once, because the most important aspect of AI is writing the prompts that create the copy for you. And with the same prompt, you can create 1 email or you can create 10 emails. The work is exactly the same. And if you don't think that's possible, not only is it possible, I know for a fact that the best performing video sales letter on Google in 2023 in the entire South American market was 80% written with AI. And again, writing an entire VSL is the highest level of complexity you can get to when it comes to service delivery and copywriting. When we're delivering simple weekly emails, AI can take care of that for you, no problem. Again, I'm going to show you how to do that in practice in episode 3. Now, going back to where I was before, the real secret here is finding something that you can sell recurrently, meaning something that you can sell once and then get paid every single month for it. And you can do that with all of the services I just mentioned, by the way. The beauty of a service-based business is that you don't need to be selling 500 units a month to make a full-time income with it. In fact, it only requires 2 to 3 sales to already be able to quit your job or drop out of uni. The key with service-based businesses is that they don't require any startup investment to get up and running because you are the product. So, in case everything goes wrong, the worst thing that will ever happen is you getting a no when talking to a prospective client. And I know that might still sound terrifying for a few of you, but trust me, you get used to it in no time flat, and that is 100 times better than having to burn through hundreds of dollars a day trying to make things work, which is the case for 90% of software businesses or even some e-commerce stores, for example. What you need to understand is that those businesses are not built to generate profit. In fact, they are built to generate as little profit as possible so that you can always reinvest 100% of the money you make. So that way you can scale to multiple 8 and 9 figures as fast as possible and then sell the business. Most of the time, their founders already have an abundance of cash and they are looking for a business where they can use that cash as leverage for exponential growth. Now, if you don't have that kind of cash, that is not a game that makes sense for you to play just yet. And by the way, that's exactly what I did first with my education company and with my software businesses. If you take Flozy, for example, which is my main software company, I launched that business almost 3 years ago.
This is gonna be interesting. I'm just gonna go on for 3 hours. Just if there's anything at all that might potentially, you can see like someone's email, I'm gonna try to move this like a little further back, but yeah. Oh my God, man, this is just gonna go on for like an hour. Basically now all of our free trial customers are finally getting billed, and this is just gonna keep going on and on and on. Oh man, it's bumping. This is cool.
That's not cool though.
Catch.
Anyway.
Oh my God. I don't think I got any charges.
Fucking sick.
Let's do it.
It's just a matter of straight.
I mean, a lot of failed ones, but anyway.
Yeah, but as I said, like, I mean.
And you know how much cash I've taken out of it so far? Absolutely zero, because that is a business that is built to sell, not to generate cash flow. In fact, this will be my next big move, and I can't speak on it yet, but I will publicly disclose exactly what that big move is for the first time ever during episode 3 on Friday. But for now, what I need you to understand is that my agency was a business that generated me the cash and experience to then get into more advanced business models where I can use my money as leverage. And I've been telling people this for half a decade now. Cash flow business, and then you use that money and experience to build businesses that have enterprise value.
My agency is doing roughly around 37,000 pounds a month, which is roughly around like $50,000 a month at the moment. My agency is quite literally the only reason that I'm profitable at the moment. Everything that's coming out of the education company, growyouragency.com, that is all going back into 6 staff, customer support team, ads, ridiculous softwares, improving the product, a new custom portal that is very expensive. So that's the funny thing is, my education company, growyouragency.com, it's not even profitable at the moment. In fact, we're losing a bit of money because of it. So yeah, it's definitely not going to be like that the entire year. Definitely, like it's going to scale right up. I guess that's a funny thing. The funny thing is my agency is actually my cash business. My agency is my cash flow business, and my agency is basically the things that pays for the nice things that I want in life.
A lot of time I feel quite jaded because a lot of time I look at my agency and just how simple it is and how streamlined it is and how profitable it is. The funny thing is my agency this year has made more profit than my education business, even though the education business revenues are way higher.
That is the game. It has always been the game, and it will always be the game, unless you want to bring on investors day one and once again be a subordinate, be a slave to them. And not only that, but right now the demand for online marketing services for businesses is growing exponentially fast, and the amount of people to deliver such services doesn't grow nearly as quickly. And there is an enormous gap to be filled, and let me illustrate it for you right now. Just in the US alone, there are around 33 million small businesses, and pretty much all of them need online marketing services. Listen, as I mentioned already, I run the leading online education platform for agency owners. customers. Right now, we have about 25,000 paying members at the time of recording this. Now, let's say the whole agency space is 5 times larger than that, which is a big stretch, by the way, because we've been doing this a long time and we have been the leading experts in this for a very long time. So anyways, that would be about 125,000 agencies to service around 30 million small businesses just in the US. And keep in mind, the majority of our students have clients worldwide, but that would still equate to 240 clients per agency just in the US. For you to make a good living with this, you need about 2 to 5 clients, which pay on average around $2,000 a month. For you to make big money, you need from 10 to 20 clients. And that means that there's still 220 clients left out there to be serviced just from your share of the market, not to count everyone else's 220 clients too. And again, it's actually super simple to deliver these services to clients. Now, you can go one of 2 routes. You can either learn yourself how to deliver the services, which should take about a month or 2, or you can hire a contractor who is already experienced in delivering such services and get them to deliver it for you while still keeping 70 to 80% of the profit. Now, inside Agency Accelerator, I teach you exactly how to do that. And the reason that's beautiful is because that creates an arbitrage play. You don't even need to have money to outsource the services because you never have to pay anything out of pocket, which means there's literally no risk on your end whatsoever. And I call this contractor arbitrage. And in my opinion, there's no better way to get started in the digital space than this. Starting an agency is the only option that doesn't require money to get started. And it's actually realistic to go from 0 to full-time income within 2 to 3 months of work. And by the way, I'm not saying that you will go from 0 to full-time income in 3 months, but I'll be honest, I've seen thousands of people do it, starting with 0 business experience, putting in the necessary effort day in and day out, and then within 3 months, enjoying the 3 forms of freedom of a sovereign man: financial sovereignty, geographical sovereignty, and sovereignty of time. So just think about the fact that in a matter of months, you could be enjoying more freedom than most doctors, lawyers, and engineers from your city, and be the one who has the business and lifestyle that all of those same lawyers, doctors, and bankers wish they had when they went to bed at night. So if you want this to be your reality, starting a sovereign business is the thing that will have the most impact in your life by far.
My agency truly has made me the man I am today. You know, for me, it's not so much that I'm at a point where my agency is making me $60,000 to $70,000 a month of profit. For me, it genuinely is like who I've become in the making.
Look, at this point, you already understand the importance of the sovereign business. In fact, if you're watching this, I'm sure you already knew the importance of starting a business before, and you were probably even convinced about starting one. Now, maybe you didn't know which business that was, but you knew you wanted to start something. Now, have you ever stopped to ask yourself, what makes a business? Is it the product? Is it the people? What makes Google, Google? What makes Apple, Apple? Look, many will say that what makes a business is its people. But let's think about it from a very fundamental perspective. If you take Apple, who would be the most important person in that business? Steve Jobs. Well, Steve Jobs is not there anymore, and Apple is doing better than it's ever done. So it's not actually the people, neither is it the product. I mean, take Google. There's nothing particularly special about Google. There are many different search engines out there just as good. Same thing with Gmail, there's many other options. But yet, Google is still by far the biggest one. So what is the answer? Look, when you search on Google, all that happens on the back end is a process is running. When Google serves you with an ad, that's a process running. When the algorithm recommends you a video, that is a process. Even if you go back to the product example, you need to create a product, and in order to do that effectively, you need to have a process. You know, people, they don't just appear to work for you. You need to find them. And for that, there's a hiring process. So at the end of the day, all a business is a collection of processes that you repeat over and over. And that alone may look simple, but when you put them together, then you create a winning business. And the better those processes are, the better the business becomes. So let's take it back to the agency example. If you broke down every single activity I did in my agency that turned it into a successful business, every single one of those activities can be distilled down to a process. Getting clients, that is a process, a very simple one actually. You don't need a ton of followers. You don't need to be a master of sales. You don't need to be an expert at the service you deliver. You don't even need a website. You just need a repeatable step-by-step process that you can perform over and over, which will always generate the same results.
So for the last 3 months, I have not had a website. In the last 45 days, I've doubled my retainers from my agency. So this month we'll hit around 55K now. 2 days ago, at the time of recording this, I actually signed a £4,000 a month client and a £7,800 a month client. And I did that all without a website.
And the reason I was able to accomplish all of that was because I had a repeatable process to follow. Then we look at getting paid. That's a process.
It's funny, on my story I posted the other day, I had a £32,000 a Stripe payment come in. It was from a client that I charged for a 2-day training. So one of our existing clients flew in from America. My Stripe fee for that, I think, was like almost £1,000. And, you know, tons of people, you know, because I posted the actual screenshot, so you could see, you know, how much was deducted. And tons of people were like, dude, like, can't believe you're paying like £1,000
in fee to Stripe when they could have just bank wired you. And to me, that's totally worth it. To me, it's fine paying, anywhere from 1.4 to 2.9%, depending on, where they are in the world. I'm totally cool paying that because that brings up the likeliness of me signing a client exponentially that honestly, I just couldn't care less about the fee. What I'm gonna do right now is I'm actually gonna bill them, as you can see right here. So you can see 5% ROAS performance fee, first month, 8,160. You can see I'm gonna press pay automatically, and then I'm gonna show you my guys' iPhone, and then I'm gonna get Tristan to blur it out as best as he can. So send, let's hope their bank doesn't decline. We'll get Tristan to blur out their name. The reason I can get paid this much, and I got paid that multiple times over and over, is because I had a process to do so. Looking back at my agency, coming up with performance-based billing structures, that is a process.
So you can see with this client, they want to get to 500K to $1 million per month in revenue. And the month prior to starting to work with us, they spent 60K and brought back in 200K. So that was kind of the benchmark of what they were accomplishing. And you can see another deal right here, which is a couple days later, another e-commerce business that wants to spend 500K a month and bring back in 1.3 million a month. And you can see where we actually ended up pitching them right there, which is 2,800 pounds a month plus 5% profit on anything we make them from the ad. So in that case, that would have been 1.3 million minus 500,000. That's a spread of 800,000. So if we manage to hit our goal, in that case, our performance fee is 40 grand for the month.
If you look at onboarding high-paying clients, that is a process.
I am currently onboarding a new client. I thought I'd show you guys something that's pretty cool. So I'm onboarding a client called Ring. We've been in talks for like 2 months now. So it's like this little piece of tech right here. It's pretty dope. They did like 10 million in the last 10 months in revenue. So they're like a big client, and they have a lot going on right now. They're signing this week. It's 7,800 pounds a month. That's the retainer with them, just Facebook ads. And within 90 days, we want to get to 100K a month in ad spend. So it's gonna be fun.
If you look at delivering your services and getting world-class results for your clients, that is a process.
I've got Ring. So in the last 30 days, we did $250,000 profit for them. Literally spent like 7.5 grand, brought back 266 grand. And that first month we just did retargeting only.
Building a team that does all of that work for you, that is a process.
Just do the onboarding call with this client. So I'll give you a 60-second recap of how that went.
First kind of generic question is, right now, where is the majority of your traffic coming from?
It would be from Instagram, number one, and then it would be from Facebook, Google, and then Snapchat.
Okay, all paid.
Yeah, all paid. We don't have any, massive like organic stuff. It's majority paid. I say 80% of it's paid.
Got it. Perfect.
Once your interview's done, can you send a loom to and just go over what our return on ad spend, like how much we spend, basically just our performance fee for last month, if you can bring that down.
Yeah, for sure. We spent 2,078,000 crowns and made back 4,757,000 crowns. That's 2.7 million crowns roughly.
Ensuring that clients stay with you, that's another process.
I'll drop that message just here. Obviously, at the end of the day, we always show the client the loom. Anyways, the final total, and they actually paid us in dollars, so we ended up receiving it in pounds, was $9,900 US dollars. So we received 7,000 pounds. I'm just looking at my bank account. And I'll go ahead and throw up the screenshot confirmation on Slack, and I'll also show you guys right now. So as you can see, they sent $9,900 US dollars, and I ended up receiving 7,000 pounds. So there's a little bit of transfer fees taken. So it wasn't quite a 5-figure performance fee for this month, but between the $9,900 performance fee in the first month plus our billable with them, which is just a small $2,200 retainer, that comes out to $11,000 billable in the first month with this client.
Communicating with your clients and your team, that is another process.
Slack is how I communicate with my team. It's how I communicate with my clients. I can show you an example right here. This is one of our old clients, Cameron Foos, who's for trading. Yeah, you can just see a couple of our clients on the side there. As always, I'm pretty much an open book. I try to be as transparent as possible, so I guess I don't really mind you seeing some of our clients that we worked with and we work with. So channels, I have tons and tons of channels, older clients that we no longer work with.
The thing I'm trying to make clear here, the bottom line of this is every single aspect of running a successful business boils down to having a process. And if you don't have a successful business yet, it is because you don't have a collection of proven processes. It's that simple. On the other hand, if you were to have this collection of processes, you would have a successful agency. Meaning the difference between you and me is not that I'm smarter than you or that I worked harder than you. The only difference is that I have the processes and you don't. And I was so lucky to realize that very early on. So what I did is I perfected these processes over my 6 years of running an agency, iteration after iteration. Some of these processes I've refined over 300 times. I mean, just think about how many clients I onboarded, how many sales calls I had, how many checking calls I had with clients that I attended. Each one of those was an opportunity for refinement. Then I documented every single one of those processes, each step of them in meticulous detail, because once you document them, they become repeatable. So then I took my software Flowzy. You may have heard of it before. It's a software that helps agencies run their entire operations. And what I did was I created a flow for every single process in my agency, one by one, in excruciating detail. And I started to collect those processes and build this library of every single process you need to run your own agency. For any task I needed to execute on my agency, I could just plug and play that exact process. Need to onboard a client? Run the client onboarding process from Flowzy. Need to build a new landing page? Run the page building process from Flowzy. Need to set up invoicing for a new client? Simple, just run the invoicing process from Flowzy. If you get to the bottom of the question, what is a business? This is it. This structure is my business. If someone were to steal this, it would almost be as if they were stealing my entire business. And that is just how important this is. That is my sovereign structure. And if you want to have a successful business, you need to start building your own library of processes, one by one. You create a process, you test it out, you document it, and you improve it. And then you repeat this process until that process runs flawlessly. And it may take time. For me, it took me over 6 years to collect all of those processes. But once you have them, you have a fail-proof machine. You have a sovereign structure. And that is the only way to create a business that stands the test of time and provides you with financial, geographical, and time sovereignty for an entire lifetime. So listen, some men don't have to play by the rules, but you have to earn that right. And these 4 sovereignty codes that I just taught you are a cheat code to earn that right. But if you want to become a sovereign man and achieve the trifecta of sovereignty, you have no option but to apply every single one of them in your own life. But that is easier said than done. And I am very aware of that. And that is precisely why I prepared episode 3 of Digital Sovereignty, especially for you. Today, I've shown you the codes to become a sovereign man. But in the next episode, I want to do 2 things. The first is I'm going to show you what the path to applying these codes to your life looks like in practice with real life examples of people who did it. And then I want to give you the codes.